Hey
Hello,
Keith,
hey David, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, how's the day so far?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Fantastic.
I'm honored to be joining you.
I'm sorry.
I said I'm honored to be joining you. I'm looking forward to this. This
Thank
is
you.
great. Thanks.
It's a pleasure, David, to have you. Thank you. And David, November 16th, you're putting up your new album, Skunk Works. So, would you like to tell me a bit about the making of this album and the production behind this new album?
Sure, sure. Um, this is the CD version, Skunk Works.
Looks fantastic.
Thank you. And what do you want to hear first, the writing or the concept?
The writing process behind it.
Okay. The writing process behind it actually started in 2016. And I began writing the album then. Of course, we had the pandemic, which interfered with as did with many other artists, the finishing of the album. But what I basically did is that I wrote a whole bunch of songs, more than I've ever written. I went over all of them, and then I basically just trashed everything.
Mhm.
And I decided I was going to go with more of a concept, even though it's all instrumental. So what I did, I rewrote the best of the bunch of the songs that I wrote, and I decided that I was going to add keys,
Mhm.
not so much for parts, but for atmosphere. I decided I was going to use not just my touring band, and don't get me wrong, they're great, but I brought in other musicians that I've known for years that could add a little bit more diversity and flavor. For example, I had Jordan Canada of Slaughter,
Mhm.
Lynch Mob, and Adrenaline Mob come on, and he played drums on a couple of the tracks. My touring band, Lance Yeager and Alejandro Garcia, are both New York based musicians, but these are guys are top shelf guys. They're solid players. Alejandro wrote his own album some years back as a percussionist called Afro Mantra, and he was nominated for a Grammy.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
again, good solid players. Um, I had Paul Ranieri, who's with the Mark Wood Orchestra and Riot, come in and play on a couple of the songs. He played bass. Claudio Galinsky, also with Riot Band, he plays drums for Riot Band. He played on one of the tracks. Then I had Persona non grata, who it's a funny story with Persona non grata. He's a pro musician, but his day gig is he's a trial attorney.
Mhm.
So I wanted him for this particular song, and I said, "Hey, I think that you could really do a great job on bass." He says, "Yeah, I'd love to do it." I said, you need to do the video too?" And he goes, "I can't do that. I have a law practice." He says, "Oh, I got an idea." So what he did, he put on a mask, and he called himself Persona non grata. He says, "That's how I'll appear on the album." Okay, if that's what you want, you got it, buddy. So Persona non grata is on the album. And last but two more. Joe Denizone, who's the violinist in Kansas, came
Mhm.
in, and it's a strange story with the two songs he played on. Originally, Don Chaffin, the producer, and I wanted violin sounds on it, so we did the violin sounds on keyboards, and then we mixed and mastered them. And I'm listening to the masters. I'm like, you know what? This sounds really good, but damn, I really need a real violin player. So I went back into the studio and I said, Don, I'm going to add a real violinist. So he starts going through his phone. I'm going to call some studio cat. I said, forget about that. I'm going to call Joe Denizone. He's like, the violin player in Kansas. I said, yeah. He goes, he's on tour. I said, watch this. I said, hold my beer. So what I did, I called Joe up, left him a message. He calls me back later that day. I said, look, I have two tracks. I already have the guidelines, the guide melodies, but I need you to put your violin magic on it. He says, consider it done. So we emailed him the tracks, and like 3 or 4 days later, they came back, and it far exceeded what we were able to do on keyboards. I mean, he's a true professional, and to have a real violinist, the feel that it brought out in the songs. So he's on the first track, Prologue, which is essentially Skunkworks. There are two versions of Skunkworks which appear on the album. The first is Prologue, which is more of an acoustic sounding introduction to the album, and then the actual Skunkworks song. Jordan Kanata plays drums on both. And on the second version, the more progressive metal version of Skunkworks, I have Glenn DeGrossa, who's from Awaken, on bass and guitar synthesizer. And let me tell you how that happened. Glenn did the bass parts on Skunkworks, and I listened to it. He did a phenomenal job. And what happened, I had the keyboards originally doing the violin parts, and I told him, I says, you know what? I may get a real violinist to come in and do that. He says, I have a guitar synth. He says, let me take a shot at it. I said, okay. And he sent back the most amazing guitar synthesizer solo. It wasn't a violin. He made it sound, I guess, almost like a flute sound, but it sounded amazing. And I listened to this, and my head exploded. I'm like, wow, this is just great. And it really brought this one section of the song where it goes into this waltz tempo. It really made it pop out. So I was blessed in so many ways to know these musicians. So then I write all of these songs, and it's the first album I've ever put on vinyl. So then what I learned is, if you're going to use 180-gram vinyl, and I didn't know this because I've only ever done downloads and CDs. If you do 180-gram vinyl, they don't let you put more than 18 minutes on each side. So then I had to do the unthinkable. I had to cut 2 songs. And I had to listen through all of these songs and all of the great guitar riffs, all of the great hooks, all of the great playing. And then Keith, I'm just like, all right, these 2 have to go, because I wanted the album to sound. The 2 songs that got cut were acoustic songs, and I wanted the album to sound a little bit heavier. If I had the space to do it on the vinyl record, I probably would have put in all of the songs, because I am shredding on the acoustic, sort of like an Al Di Meola, John McLaughlin type thing. But I thought that what we finally did, what Don and I and the label decided to do, was actually the best product for what we were doing. Fantastic. So since 2016, toiling away, and it wasn't easy. many sleepless nights.
I know that's a lot of hard work behind it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And David, was there any particular concept or a theme that goes behind Skunkworks?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now maybe after I tell you this, your head will explode. Okay. Have you ever had a discussion with someone or been engaged in an activity, and then you look down at your laptop or your smartphone, and all of a sudden there's an advertisement for it? Yeah. You've experienced that, right? We've all experienced that. Okay, Keith, do you think that works only one way?
It's both ways.
That's right. So that means not only do they know that they can not only beam information to you or take it from you to influence you through advertising and stuff like that, to say, hey, we're advertising the product that you were just talking to a friend about, but they could probably beam messages the other way. And the whole idea behind Skunkworks, it's anti-artificial intelligence. That's the whole theme of the record. I'm not a fan of artificial intelligence for that reason, simply because I think that what's been done with it probably over the last 15 to 20 years. And now I'm sounding like a conspiracy theorist, but it is what it is. Okay. If they have the ability to listen to us and then advertise to influence our behavior, well, they certainly have the ability to actually transmit certain types of signals, subliminal messages, and we pick up on this. And then, they're influencing our behavior. And that's all designed to put us on their grid, their concept of what humans should be. So if you look at the front of the album or the CD, you'll see it says Shadow Eating Skunkworks, and then there's a printed like 3D circuit board behind it. And that's the whole point behind it. That's basically it. That's the concept.
Fantastic. And on the day of the release on November 16th, you are playing at Looney Tunes Music. So, how do you feel about doing that? And how excited you are to be there performing for the fans?
Listen, this will be our third Skunkworks performance. Okay. The first show we did, well, let me tell you what we're doing. We put a giant LED screen behind the band. We have three versions. We have a 10-foot screen, we have a 90-inch, and then we have a 40-inch because we play a lot of jazz clubs in the city. So if I contact the jazz club, a jazz club holds 200 people, we'll pack the place. But if I call them and say, hey, I'm going to bring in a 10-foot screen, they'll be like, David, man, we can't even get that through the door, you know? So we have three screens that we use, and we put them either behind the band or in front of the band. It's on an adjustable height. And what we do as we play, there are visual images which actually accompany each song. So I'm mega excited to do this. There are other bands that have done it, but not quite like this. This is more like Shadow Eden for this album is functioning like a pit band, sort of like for a play, and you're watching the visual images. Most of the times bands will play and they'll just have visual images behind them just to heighten the sense of the music they're playing. This is a little bit reversed. We're actually playing along with the images, which that was another thing. Each song, as I wrote and recorded it, mastered it, actually got its own video, which was pretty cool. Mega excited to be playing at Looney Tunes. It's going to be it's probably going to be somewhere between 50 minutes and an hour performance. I think we're bringing out a 90-inch screen. I've been blessed that I've been getting so many messages saying, hey, I got my wristband, I'm going to the show. I don't know how many people Looney Tunes holds. My guess is we'll probably pack it out. And here's the irony of it. The band's first ever gig 13 years ago was at Looney Tunes. That's where we launched the band. It was a completely different lineup, but that's where the band launched. So that's why I decided rather to do it at Looney Tunes. We're from Long Island, New York. Okay. This is where it all started. And I could have booked, the Bitter End or the Cutting Room, Arlene's Grocery, and they're all great clubs in the city. But I decided that, well, if it's going to be a CD release, what better place to do it than in a record store that sells CDs, that sells memorabilia, that sells vinyl albums. Oh, and here's another thing. If you look at the back of the Skunkworks album, here's another clue. It says copyright 1978. Now, why did I do that? Why would anyone do that?
Probably you would have started with Looney Tune music back in 1978.
No. Listen, I'm old, but I'm not that old. Good guess, though. Here's what happened. When I was doing it musically, I had the concept, I had the songs, and I listened to a lot of the newer bands, a lot of the newer guitar players. There are some fantastic players out there. And I've done music clinics. If you've looked back at my history, I've done since 2009. I think I've done just about every NAMM show in California. I've done a couple in Nashville. We used to do Fear the Riff in Brooklyn, which is where all the pedal manufacturers would get together. So there I am. I'm doing clinics with Zach Wilde, Petrucci, all of those cats, and they're all monster players. And they write great songs too. And, but what I started playing guitar in 1980 as a kid. And just before I started playing guitar, I was listening to bands, Van Halen was out. We had, in 1980, you had Randy Rhoads come out. 10 years later, you had Dream Theater come out. So you had all of these bands, Queen, Rush, Permanent Waves, one of my favorite Rush albums. So, and even some of the pop stuff, even some of the disco stuff, people laugh at it. But when people say to me, oh, you like some of that stuff? I'm like, yeah, did you ever try playing a funk rhythm? I mean, look at Nuno Betancourt of Extreme, guitar player. And if you listen to his playing or even Eddie Van Halen's playing, you could hear that funk rhythm in it. And you didn't get that from a rock song. You got that from listening to a dance song. You know, like some of the disco stuff, certainly Paul and Funkadelic, all great songs, all great music. So before I became a musician, Keith, I was actually listening to that stuff. And when I started writing the album, I said, you know what? I'd like to what I'd like to do with the sound is that I'd like to pay homage to Permanent Waves and to Led Zeppelin 2 and to Van Halen 1 and to Diary of a Madman and to Images and Words, not by copying any of it, but making it sound like it came from that era.
Gotcha.
So when you, and let's not forget Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck, Al Di Meola, Mahavishnu Orchestra, all great players. Black Sabbath, you know, a lot of great music came out of that era. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to write this, rather than trying to make it sound like something brand new, I'm actually going to record it, play it, and try to make it sound as if it could have come from that era.
Gotcha.
And that's what I did. That's my story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's a great, amazing thing that you have done. Awesome, awesome, David. And
Thank you.
are there any other touring plans for the band?
Yes. What we tried doing for early 2024, I'm not going to mention the names of the other bands because there's a conflict in the schedules, but I approached two other really great instrumental guitar players. And what we did in, I think, 2014, 2015, 2018 was that we would do like a tour. We'd do like a 10-date tour through the Northeast of the United States. And we do it, you know, as 3 or 4 bands. And we would go, you know, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine. Sometimes we'd swing into Pennsylvania. So I approached 2 other all instrumental guitar players, and they're like, "Yeah, we'd love to do it." And then they took a look at their schedule. I may be giving this away, but one of the guitar players plays in Alcatraz, and he's going to be on tour in Europe. That's Joe Stump, the Mighty Shred Lord. So he says, "Dave, I'd love to do it, but I'm going to be on tour." The other artist I'm not going to mention, he was going to try to wiggle his way out of some of the shows he was doing. He said, "I'd rather do this." But it didn't work out. But that's the plan. I'm probably going to get 2 or 3 other like artists, and we're going to put together like a 10 tour date in 2024. And the band on its own will continue playing around the Northeast. I had planned to go to the 2024 NAMM, but I've discovered that I'm endorsed by Paul Reed Smith Guitars, Morley Pedals, Mesa Boogie. Not one of those guys are going to be at the NAMM show. So if I go to the NAMM show, it'll merely be as an observer and not as a performer, which is kind of a bummer. But you know, that was usually on my itinerary to do that. And the goal is, and you know, look, we don't draw like 1,000 people. I don't know if that's even doable. But whenever we play these clubs, whether it's Looney Tunes, whether it's the Delancey, or whether or not it was D City Studios back in April, the places pack out all the time. We know what our audience draw is, and we stick to that. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Fantastic. And David, any plans to come up with an official music video for any of the songs from this album?
Music videos?
Yes.
We've already done a few of them. Brooklyn 1978, which is the second track, we actually did a video in 2016 when the song was written. It's not exactly the same song because when I went in and we remastered the songs, we basically it would have sounded too different from the rest of the album. So we went in and we remixed and remastered that song. It's a phenomenal song. So we have a video for that. The title song, Skunkworks, has a video with myself, Glenn DeGrossa, and Jordan Kanata. And it doesn't get any better than that. So there are videos. There are a couple of songs which basically just have what I call collage videos. and those were designed for the live performance. So we took, public domain clips, some movie clips, we threw them together just for the live performance. But I think the next song, great question, Keith. The next song that we're probably going to do a video for is for Blind Dog, which is an ode to Robert Johnson, the famous blues player. And what's interesting about that song is that I stepped away from my shred licks and I play a lot of blues licks, and I played slide guitar. That was the first time I had played slide guitar seriously in about 20 years. And I was really nervous because most of the music I do these days, there's no need for slide in it. So what I decided to do that. I'm very, very apprehensive. So what I did in secret, I wrote the song. We did all the rhythm tracks. The band went in. I mean, Alejandro and Lance went in there. They killed it. Their parts were off the charts. And then what I secretly did when it came to the guitar solo, I finished off the other songs, but secretly in the background, I was practicing slide guitar because I had to get it back up to snuff. I mean, I'm a huge Joe Bonamassa fan, who's not a metal guy, but he's a great blues guitar player. Him and Sonny Landreth also. He's from New Orleans, great slide guitar player. And I'm listening to these guys play slide guitar, and I'm like, I at least have to play half as good as these cats. Otherwise, it's all over, So I spent probably almost 2 months getting my slide guitar licks back up to snuff. And then I went in and I recorded the solo in probably 2 hours. I did a few takes, and then we mixed it into the song, and it came out really nice. Another unusual thing that I did with the song, do you know the legend of Robert Johnson?
Yep.
That he sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads. So what I did, two things. It starts off as an acoustic song, and it's drop tuned, so it sounds heavy. It sounds real like Mississippi blues. And then it does like one complete revolution of the song minus the chorus. Then we do a second time, and the electric guitar kicks in. But we also kick in a djembe. And my drummer Alejandro is an expert in Afro-Cuban rhythms. So rather than have him play a rock beat over the blues thing, I had him play an Afro-Cuban rhythm, an ethnic rhythm over the blues guitar parts. And it sounds massive scary because it starts to have, there's no other way to say it. It sort of starts to have like this Louisiana voodoo mystic quality to it. So it goes that far. Then we get into the chorus, and it's very heavy. It's drop D and stuff like that. People that are into bands with drop tuning are gonna love it. And then comes the guitar solo, and then the song fades out with just the acoustic guitar it started with. So I like doing a lot of that. A lot of the rhythms I incorporate into these songs. A lot of rhythms are on the upbeat. They play off the clave, so it's not. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but a lot of rock and metal bands, not all, but a lot of them, they're great at what they do, but they're beholden to the downbeat. Everything's on the downbeat, and that's to make it sound heavy. That's cool. I want to do something a little bit different. So what I do is that I encourage the band. I said, well, we're going to accent the upbeats here, and that's where the guitar solo is going to be. So you guys will be playing mostly on the downbeat, and the melody is going to be on the upbeat. And every once in a while, I'll join you on the downbeat. And that's probably 95% of my solos are on the upbeat. And it gives us this sort of like jazz, fusion swagger sound, sort of like a Jeff Beck type thing. Like if you listen to Jeff Beck Blow by Blow or Wired, it sort of has that feel to it. I'm a fast player though, so my fast licks very much like Al Di Meola. I'm very much into that heavy picking stuff. John McLaughlin, John Petrucci, into those cats. So Zach Wilde.
Awesome, awesome, David. And
Yeah.
David, Shadow Eden was formed back in 2009. So how has this journey with Shadow Eden has been so far?
It's been a great ride. There was some trying times. I did lose two band members. I had two band members pass away on me. Those were really, really dark times, and I'm just blessed that I found the strength to get through it. Uh, there was one point where after the second band, and they died from disease. It was very unfortunate. But after Randy Coven passed away, and of course Kenny Widener passed away, and then Randy Coven, and that was a long time ago now. But I was just about ready to give it up and just go play with another band. And um, Perpetual Motion, which was our second CD, was just about to come out. And Don Chaffin, who, by the way, Don plays on the album too. He does some of the piano and keys on the album. He's also the producer. He called me up, and what he said to me was, one day you're going to meet Randy again. And if he finds out you gave up, he's going to be pissed at you. He says he would not have wanted it this way. And I said, Don, this is, it's a lot. And, I was brokenhearted over both of their passings. And it's hard to lose it. A band is family. Okay. When a band is driving around in a van, and I'm, this is no exaggeration. When we go and we play all of these cities, I basically load up the van. We have our equipment in there. We have suitcases. We have, some, toothbrushes and razors. And in my case, I've got dye for my beard. So if I'm wearing a red shirt, my beard is red. If I'm wearing a blue shirt, it's blue. So, you're a family and you're on top of each other for weeks at a time. It's like that for, really, really famous bands too. The only difference being is that they put you on a tour bus, presumably at that point. But when you do the kind of shows that we do, you really you become a family. It's like you take on another two brothers. You become brothers, and then to lose not one, but two what I call family members. It was rough. It was very, very rough. But I found the resolve to pick up and move on. I know that their families are happy with my decision because I've spoken to both families since that time, and both of them said that, yeah, our brothers, our son would have wanted you to keep doing what you're doing, and it's been breathtaking because when I started doing the band in 2009, I had a number of agents and booking agents tell me, you're insane. You're absolutely insane. They were telling me that Joe Satriani and Steve Vai, well, yeah, they have their following, but they're done. Why are you going to start something that's, Al Di Meola? Al Di Meola is playing small jazz clubs. And my reaction to that was, well, maybe all of that's true, but there is an audience for it. They're drawing that audience, and they're doing it their way. And I basically said, I'm going to get this band together. We're going to write really good songs. We're going to rehearse constantly. We're going to, really get into our art and our craft, make sure that it's perfect. We're going to hit the road with it. And if we fail, look, we fail on our own merit, not on someone else's. And again, I'm not in any way trying to talk condescending about someone that takes a gig with another band, because I've done that. That's great because it pays the bills. But I decided that with this band, I was going to do it on my terms, with my music, my lineup, my players, my venues, and it's been good. It's been good.
Fantastic.
So,
And how, as a band, do you look into the future of Shadow Eden?
okay, the future of Shadow Eden. Well, so far the CD has sold phenomenally well. We're actually back ordered. I don't know the exact number of CDs that we printed. I will not stream music. and you've heard probably plenty of comments from established artists that musicians that stream their music, it's simply being used to advertise other things, which goes back to the theme of Skunkworks. What are they really doing with your streamed music? It's basically giving a third party an unauthorized platform to profit off of other things with your music, and they're not getting compensated. I'll take Joe Bonamassa has been very vocal about streaming not doing anything. Okay, so they're using your music to piggyback other people's music, and what else are they doing? What other advertisements are they doing with the streaming process that you're not aware of? Because it's an unauthorized third party, and they're making money off of all of these things, off of all these advertisements. You're not getting advertising dollar from that. That would be Bonamassa is correct in that. Now, the comparison I would draw is that I'm doing these gigs. All right, so let's say 150 people show up to one club I'm playing. So there are my CDs, my shirts, everything else. That would be like someone, I don't want to name, like someone from a soft drink company suddenly coming into my gig, okay, and selling their product. It's one thing if the bar does it, all right, because the bar is giving you the structure to play in, they're giving you the sound system, you're working out your deal with the bar. But this would be like a vendor, a soft drink vendor, just coming in off the street, say, screw the bar, screw shadowing. We're going to sell our soft drinks here, but we're not going to give either one of you a cut. So I don't stream the music for that reason. Some people think that that's a little bit crazy, but hey, again, it's my band. I do what I want with my band and my craft. I know that, I know exactly what's coming in and going out in terms of the selling of the product. I'm controlling the horizontal and the vertical, and that's really what any artist, whether it's music or paintings or television, any one of the arts, I think the key to success is controlling the terms that you're on as much as possible. Sometimes you can't, but where you can, you should try to control it. So the future of Shadow Eden, very simple. The first run of CDs has already sold out. These are all marked with barcodes that will register it with Billboard. The 2016 CD actually charted on the Loud Heavy chart, which is the college chart. It reached number one. It stayed at number one for almost 3 weeks. It beat out Megadeth. Yes. Megadeth's album came out in late January of 2015, and they were like a week behind us. So it took them a week to catch up with us. And here's the clincher. Dave Mustaine and I used the same radio promoter. And boy, I heard he wasn't too happy. Nice guy, but he's like, and I said the same thing. Who's this band Shadow Eden? An all-instrumental band, and they're now number one on the college chart. And the CD sales on that album were pretty robust. And I think that I'm probably going to, hopefully, at least match, if not exceed that with this. And I'll probably get some sort of a distant Billboard charting with that. Now, how does that help me? Okay. What I'd like to do is that because I've introduced all of these different instruments, keys, violinists, etc., I think that sometime in the next year, and what my goal is to begin going in from those small jazz clubs like Cutting Room, Orleans, Delancey, Iridium, and all great clubs. I mean, you go in there, the bands go in there because they're intimate, that you sound great. All right. There's no better place to hear a band of any genre. As long as the band has its stuff together, they could sound great. But then what I'd like to do is start getting into larger venues that hold 500 or 1,000 people. And of course, what happens, the income is higher at that point. So I can suddenly begin to hire a keyboard player and a violinist. And now the band image and sound live is completely reshaping. So that's the goal for the future of Shadow Eden. And also we'd like to expand out of just the Northeast and the conventions that we do, which have been very helpful. You know, NAMM Convention, Fear the Riff, have been hugely helpful to us because I basically could take the band out to California for someone else's dime and you make 2 appearances.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge because what suddenly happens, you know, Paul Reed Smith Guitars, they walk into the venue one day and there's this band up there and I'm not playing a Paul Reed Smith. I'm playing someone else's guitar. And they're like, wow, this band's really fantastic. So what do? They give my roadie a card saying, hey, we want to talk to this guy. That's exactly the way it happened. And that's how I became endorsed with Paul Reed Smith. My relationship with Morley Pedals goes back even longer. That probably goes back to 2009, 2010. And I was using a Morley since 1997. And the original Morley pedal that I used at that time still works. It's not on my board anymore because it's one of the big ones. They were much bigger back then. So now I'm using something with a smaller footprint. It makes more room on the pedal board, but the original pedal still works. So I approached them once at the NAMM convention and we spoke a little bit. And I said, yeah, I'm going to be performing later for Grover Jackson Guitars. So they came and they checked it out, and there's my, 20-plus-year-old Morley pedal, and they were like blown away by it. So then I started doing, appearances for them. I did Nashville, I did Anaheim, I did 2 or 3 Fear of the Riffs for them. I did a bunch of Sam Ash music stores. I think Shadow Eden did at least one appearance at every Sam Ash music store in the Northeast, which would include New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts. We did clinics at all of them. And what they are, they're really mini concerts. We go up there, we play for 40 minutes, and I'm advertising the Morley stuff. They have different types of things. And, the money was great. And then what happens, you bring your CDs. So not only do you get compensated by the manufacturer, and you go and you play our music to highlight their gear, but all of a sudden, if you have 50 people in the audience and you could sell 30 or 40 of these, hey, that's lunch and dinner. So it doesn't.
Awesome. And David, what would be the best moment as for Shadow Eden? And would you like to share something about your best moments with Shadow Eden?
Well, there were many of them. I'm trying to think. Well, there's a couple of funny moments. The original drummer in the band, he used to smoke. So we rushed up to this gig at the Church of Boston. It wasn't a real church. They just called it the Church of Boston. And it was right across the street from Fenway Park. So we got stuck in mad traffic. And we just about got there. We just about got the sound check. And we were the first band on. So it was us. It was Ben Levin Group and Joe Stump. All right. Great lineup. Great guitar lineup. So we get there, and the drummer went out and he lit a cigarette. It was, it was cold. So he went out to the truck. You can't smoke in the club. He went out to my van. He opens up the door and he's smoking. Okay. And he starts a fire in my van. Something caught, and like, Dave, your van's on fire. So we ran back. Okay. I got a pitcher of water from the bar and I threw it, and the whole van just filled like smoke. Now we all smell like smoke. So that was like a really, really funny moment. And then the funniest thing is you have to drive home in that van.
Yeah.
And if you get the smell of smoke in anything, you can't get it out. So it smelled like we just walked out of a building that was on fire. So that was like one funny story. I think the most memorable moment that I ever had with the band is that we did a tour in 2015, and the other bands that we were playing with, I'm not going to mention them, but they were monster bands. As a matter of fact, one of the guys in the band played on this CD, but it was his own band, and they're fantastic. But all these other bands, they have 5, 6 members. some, like that, and we're a three-piece. So we played a show in Connecticut, and these guys had never toured with us before, and we were on fire. It was me, Paul Ranieri on bass, and Kenny Lane on drums. And we had been doing a lot of local shows. I don't know how many hours we had under our belt. And we get to this club in Connecticut, and it was being reviewed by a progressive rock magazine. And we took the night. It's not that the other bands weren't great, but we were just on, and it was just completely on fire, and we knew it. As you're there playing and you hear the sound on the stage and going out and you're watching people's reactions. So the write-up of the show came up, and while, again, all three bands were phenomenal. I'm not speaking about the other bands in a condescending way, but the person reviewing the show basically said Shadow Eden took the night. What they said about my playing, they said this guy Mercado's fingers are made of liquid mercury, which is kind of funny because if you think the way mercury moves, it's kind of a weird analogy, but it sort of caught on after that. And that was probably my next memorable moment when we went in there like that. And that was the first show we had done with these other two bands. Again, great bands, but I have to say we spanked them a little bit.
That's fantastic. And a great success, quite known around the world as one of the biggest guitarists. And how do you feel about the success, David? And what do you think are the milestones that took you to this big success?
Well, look, Keith, I'm a very humble guy. I'm only as good as my last gig. I'm only as good as my last album. Even today, I think I played somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. I give music lessons. I give a lot of music lessons. I'm very humble. There'll always be someone better than you. And the gifts that musicians are given are from God. They're not ours. And you have to make the best of what we're given. Okay? And that's the way I feel about it. And I don't go out there, I don't want to mention any famous guitar players, but there are some very famous guitar players that are really arrogant. And sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's not. But I don't think it's ever acceptable. Because I think what really counts is that if you take away a musician's musicianship, who are they really? Right? We're all the same. All right, we're all brothers and sisters. So you're given this gift, and you make music to entertain other people, make other people happy, all that great stuff. So why be arrogant about it? It could be taken away from any one of us at any time, for any reason. So just be humble, go out there, do it because you love it, and you like making other people feel good with what you have.
Awesome, David. And David, finally, any message for the fans around the world?
I'm sorry?
Any message that you want to give to your fans around the world?
Message I want to give to fans around the world is, well, first off, buy the new CMD and album because we put a lot of hard work and you're going to love it. It's a little bit of a throwback sound. It's very stripped down in some ways, but I think you're going to love it a lot. And the other thing is that go out and support local bands and local music, Shadow Eden and other bands, because what it does is that it basically furthers art, and sometimes it's more important to further the art than some of these, projects that are backed by entertainment companies. I know that that's part of the deal too, but support smaller bands. For example, I went to see Al Di Meola in Tarrytown, New York last year, and he played in a relatively small venue. He was up there with a couple of tabla players and a rhythm guitar player. And, that's not like, going and seeing Journey at like the Coliseum. It's a different type of gig. But you want to know something? As good as Journey is, I would not trade that Demiola show for the Journey show. And that's what I would say to the Shadow Eating fans. We have a loyal fan base. We love them. Keep making us do what we do. And the only way we do what we do is when you come out to see us. And we'll always be the same 3 humble guys. And if I make enough money, maybe it'll be 5 humble guys.
That's great, that's great. And David, I want to thank you so much for giving me today this wonderful opportunity to have you on this show. And thank you so much for years of musical awesomeness. And thank you for putting up this new album, Skunkworks, on November 16. We're all looking forward for the release. And thanks again for the awesomeness, David. I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Keith. Can I say just one more thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at shadoweatingofficial.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. So look for us, leave comments. And Keith, I want to thank you. I'm honored to be on your broadcast on the video channel. I'm looking forward to it.
And thank you. And have a great
Thank you, Keith.
out there. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye, David.
Take care.
Bye.
Peace, brother.
Peace, peace, brother.
Peace.